Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. As always, I am your host, Mike Murray. Today, we have two special guests. We have our associate head coach at Victor Swim Club, Dan Burke, who moonlights on a lot of episodes with us as we wade through some age group coaching and discussion on development today. And we have from the Sandpipers of Nevada, Jake Des Roches. Jake, welcome to the program. Thank you for carving out some time today to talk age group swimming. Sandpipers, they are the hot name in swimming right now for good reason. And we're looking forward to hearing a lot about your coaching philosophy, what you learned from working with great coaches like Michael and Ron and the rest of the staff at Sandpipers. And just to let you guys know, you're going to be inundated with bodies on deck when we have the ASCA World Clinic in Vegas this September. So welcome to the program, Jake.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Happy to be here and chat about swimming. It's what we do. So talking about things is always good. It makes you a better coach in the end.
For sure. You know, it's funny. I've seen you at Open Water Nationals before, and you and I always have hats and sunglasses on. So it's good to see your full face.
Yeah. I past like 2 years, I've had a beard too. So I think even last summer I had a beard during the summer, and everyone's like, "Oh, you look different now." I'm like, "I don't have a beard on anymore. It's okay."
Jake, talk to Dan and I a little bit about the program at Sandpipers and what the philosophy is for the entire team, and then how you take that and translate it into coaching the age group athletes.
Yeah. So I think in the end, we are across the board in our team, from Coach Ron's group to even our developmental groups. We're really focused consistently on the IM, and we see development in the 200, the 100, and the 200 and the 400 IM as kids get older, and we see that focus help kids translate to what they're quote unquote best at, or what they like and what they're good at. The distance freestyle is absolutely certainly a part of being good at the 400 IM. When I first started coaching our senior level groups here, and I had high school boys who are, "Hey, you're pretty fast for a 15-year-old. But like, you're just getting cooked by all these other kids in the 400 IM." And I was like, I kind of figured out on my own, "Oh, hey guys, if you don't like losing by that much, you got to get better at the 1500 too." And I kind of learned that without anyone telling me to, "Hey Jake, you need to focus more distance swimming for this type of group." We don't necessarily, in the younger age groups, train distance swimming in terms of, hey, we don't have 12-year-olds swimming bunches of 500s anywhere, one for time, once in the year before, because it's the first time half the group has swam a 500 in the age group level, something like that. And when you do get that kind of, you're swimming all the strokes, you're doing kicking in all the strokes, drills in all the strokes, fast swimming in all the strokes, technique oriented swimming in all the strokes. For those younger kids on the team, the distance freestyle races, when they get to a meet, you just see them go and they're trying hard and confident about it. And it's no difference than a 200 than a 1650 the first time a kid's swimming. It's still the longest race they've ever swam. And then kind of over time, as we see kids make those choices and veer into what they are good or could be good in long term, is really where we'll start talking more about, hey, focusing more on the 200s of stroke and the 400 IM, or hey, well, you're starting to get good at that 1500. what can we do to help that kid? And that really happens once you get into the group level that I coach, which is a senior level group, but does have those top 13, 14s within the group.
So fair to say that the focus is primarily really on developing that 400 IM, seeing how the athletes progress with it, and then starting to challenge them maybe with some distance things as they get better.
Yeah, and certainly just part of that being good at the IM is like, hey, we want to race all the different events. And when you get a pretty talented 10 or 11-year-old, like, hey, if you're 10 years old and you're racing a 1650 for the first time, like that's a big deal for a 10-year-old to be able to do that. And we don't just put every 10-year-old, every 11-year-old in those swims. We got to make sure they're ready. And hey, some of those kids end up being really good at the 1500 when they're 16. Some of them get good at other events, and that's fine too. And the kids who are later to enter those distance races might be the ones who are best at it down the line. But it's that same idea of just we want to race every different event and actually race it. And when the kids learn the differences and the lengths and the strokes, now all of a sudden they know a lot more about each. What's the difference between a 100 fly and a 200 fly? What's the difference between your 100 free and your 1500 free? For some kids, those are really big differences. For others, it's smaller. And that's how we sort of go about helping kids identify their strengths and their weaknesses in those races.
From a programmatic level, Jake, are you talking to your 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds about race and race strategy and racing in practice?
Yeah, so that's that idea of racing in practice is really important in our top age groups, where in the group that I coach, our senior elite and senior prime level, it's we generally will see like 8th graders at the youngest in those groups. Occasionally we get a 7th grader in there who's just really, really good, and we know they're ready for it. But in our age group, led by Chris Barber, he's our head age group coach, and he teaches a lot about just that idea of a consistent race effort in 650s free, but all the way up to, hey, a consistent race effort in 12 100s backstroke. And those are very different sets, but we still want to race. And hey, can I go the same number 6 times, 12 times? Did I get better from a month ago? Am I going those 650s faster? And then I think the race strategy comes in at those younger ages, more in the swim meets. And hey, like, this is what you did in practice. Like, you did backstroke this fast. I think right now I want you to focus on that 50 backstroke of the 200 IM. And in the next meet, we might talk about the freestyle leg, because they had a great backstroke split, but didn't have the wheels at the end. For my group and at the senior and national group levels is where we'll see more, like, I'd say that specific race strategy happening in practice, where like, hey, I mean, an 11-year-old, like, you tell them this strategy for the 100 free, you could tell them anything 3 months later, they're going to be faster because they're 2 inches taller now. At the senior level and within my group, I focus the race pace, I guess. A lot of the times based on that 200 of stroke, where I was on a roll earlier in the year breaststroke. And then we had to back off since a couple of kids were getting some groin pain and comfort. So hey, we backed off. We still swam really good breaststroke, but it was a little different. And now we're kind of back at it, where like this afternoon we backed off the breaststroke a little bit, because that's what we had to do to keep kids healthy, and kind of building back up now to what I would like to consistently do. So So today I'm doing a set with the whole group of a 25 from a dive, a 50 from a push, and a 75 from a push. They're all on a 1 minute interval. And after each round, we'll do like 100 easy on, I don't know, 100 easy, and then get back on the blocks. We'll do that 4 times. But I have everyone's first 150 of their lifetime best 200 breaststroke written down, and that's going to be on the board. And hey, like, especially because we're going at 25 and then a 50, and we're not doing like 75s or 100s, like, you got to go everything you got to be beating your first 150 time. I think about things a lot like that. We'll also do, I like using the 400 IM for backstrokes, generally because, hey, like, yeah, the good backstrokers have a really good 200 backstroke time. And even kids who are like pretty good at backstroke, but they're better at the IM, that 100 back and that 400 IM is going to be as fast or faster than their best second 100 pace. So we'll talk about, hey, 10 100s backstroke on 2 minutes was a set we did last week. And we want all 10 to be faster than your 400 IM backstroke split. You do things like that enough, and then all of a sudden they go faster at the end of the season, right? But when it comes to that, hey, in the season, we might swim that 400 IM the week after you do those 10 ones, and your backstroke split is way different than you did for 10 100s. So now comes the technique coaching, the effort coaching, the turns, like all those little things, like what changed in practice for you to go that fast, and now we can't do it in the 400 IM or the 200 IM. Well, coach, maybe I swim a really good 100 fly. Yeah, certainly we run into that problem all the time. A kid pumps that 100 fly and then they back off the backstroke. That's pretty predictable. And that's where, hey, the conversation with the kid about the specific race, and okay, at the end of the summer, or at the end of the short course season, can you go the same fly time and like be in control and now go faster the rest of the race? But beyond me, when you get into Coach Michael or Ron's group, and for any swimmer, as you get older, like, I mean, we take a look at what college programs are doing. And for the most part, they're very dialed in on the pacing, the splits, and like that idea of, hey, when you're in the age group here, my group kind of introduced to what speeds you do in a race and try to match that. But as you get older, it gets harder to get better. So like dialing in a little bit more and more and more every step of the way is kind of how we build into a kid having their best swim when they're 18 years old.
Sure. A lot of great information in there, Jake, and I want to unpack some of it because you got my mind turning, not only because I wanted to steal that 50 or that 25, 50, 100 set. I like that.
It's a good one. It's a good one for breaststroke and butterfly.
Sure. Yeah. You mentioned that sometimes you have some of the better 7th and 8th graders join your group, and you said the phrase, I believe you said, because we know that they're ready. Give me an example or a hypothetical of some of the conversations that you might have with a parent and athlete when they are ready to step up, and how do you kind of counsel them through that?
I mean, and hey, I say we know that they're ready. We make like wrong decisions too, and we've had it where it's like, hey, we should have held that kid back for another year, and it probably would have worked out better now. But at the time, that idea of being ready, kind of, I think the number one thing that really most swim coaches look for is like, hey, is this swimmer out training their group? And especially in that 7th grade age, like a lot of changes happens for that kid from 12 to 13. And even a kid who at the beginning of the year were like, no, they're like, absolutely not, they weren't ready. We might be saying in March, oh, hey, they're ready now. We still generally aren't going to move that kid up in the middle of the year, just because that's just what we do. I think it's done, but we always make exceptions when they're needed. But like that change that can occur, well, now, hey, that kid who was really good, but hey, they weren't training consistently. We didn't know if like how much they wanted to go to practice every day. Are they swimming one meet great, and then the next meet they're in a bad mood because they have to be at the swim meet when they want to do something else and they tank, or like all of those kind of mental just observations that we try to make as coaches are really important for moving up that kid who's like younger than the group average, because certainly the social situation of a kid being younger than everyone else has a big impact on what they do. And a lot of the times it's probably better to keep them with that social class than move them up. Hey, they're on the fence. Like that's not going to help a kid to move into a group with no friends, no one they're at school with, and all of that, when we're trying to get them to like make that kind of next step on their own and be ready to go and want to do this.
For sure. And how are those conversations happening with the parents?
The most important ones are just the conversations you have with parents throughout the year, and learning more about the family and about the swimmer and what they do. I personally, I try to watch our two top level age groups. I try to, when they're practicing overlaps with mine, I try to watch them at the end, talk with their coaches, say hi to the kids, whatever, stick my tongue out at them and make fun of them on the wall, just to kind of build that relationship already. Because hey, even if they don't move into my group, there's a chance, whatever, their coach isn't at the swim meet and I'm coaching them, and I want to know that kid. The conversation with parents is a lot of like in that move up specific process. It's a lot of education on, hey, here's what, and I try to do this as little as possible with kids who aren't in my group yet, so that way their current coach is doing it. But hey, okay, what's the difference between age group swimming and senior swimming? Okay, during the school year, you have to go to one morning practice a week. Okay, you all on the East Coast, and I'm sure coaches listen to me on the East Coast, one morning a week, that's nothing. I mean, I grew up and I swam at 4:30 to 6:15 every morning before school, from when I was 10 or something. We don't have that out here. The schools start pretty early for the most part. So really we never have kind of our age group program swimming in the morning during the school year. So, hey, we got one morning practice a week, and it's a long course. So we think it's really important. So we want that to be the highest attended practice in this group. It certainly is hard. Things happen, but we want that to be kind of a big thing. After that, it's, hey, overall, it's a little bit more of a time commitment. Okay. We're going to have 2-hour swim practices more often than not. We introduce more dry land, a lot more dry land at this level, basically every day, 30 minutes to 60 minutes. And if a family like, hey, like, I don't know if I want to do all of that, say they're questioning that. It's like, hey, like, at the end of the day, you really don't have an option to do that. If you really don't want to, like, we have other groups that aren't swimming in the morning, but your kid doesn't want to be in that group. Like, your kid wants to be in this group with their friends and teammates that they're racing with right now. And hey, we just need to figure it out together. So I think something like that swim families across the country do really well is like, hey, figure out carpools for other families. Like, that is so huge. And like, I mean, I watched today after morning practice, I watched a dad pick up 4 different kids. This afternoon, it's going to be a different parent picking up those 4 kids. and just finding a way to make those scheduling difficulties work. Communicating, hey, we're going out of town. Okay, tell me a month beforehand. Don't tell me the day before. That sort of thing, so I can plan. And the mindset of age group swimming to senior swimming that I really try to teach and coach is the swimming has got to be like all the kids. I'm not coaching mom and dad for 20 hours a week. I'm coaching you in front of me. So like, hey, like, yeah, certainly when you're 13, you don't drive a car yet. So coach, I can't come to practice because my mom's at work and she's getting off late. Okay, like, thank you. I want the kid to tell me that. I don't want the mom to text me that. Because now the kid is saying, hey, I want to be there. I can't, this happens. Like, I understand that. Then we think like when that kid goes to college, now the kid knows how to talk to their college coach, hopefully, and communicate. Coach, I have finals this time, this day. I'm going to, whatever, miss morning practice, but I'm coming in after my final to do the workout. Those types of things are the hardest part of that kind of level up. It's got to be more from the kid. They've taken responsibility for it, working on the communication, planning. Hey, I'm going to miss this meet because we go out of town every year. Okay, like I need to know that so I can get you in different events at different meets along the way. And overall and that's an ongoing process. And I try to within the different kind of ages of my group kind of level up. Like an 8th grader at the start of the year, I'm going to deal with and allow the parents to email me and text me minor things like that more often. And hopefully by the summertime, coach, I'm missing practice. We're having family dinner tonight. That's coming from the kid by that point. And then 9th graders need to do more and so on.
I love it. And, it really shows in the way that your team acts and presents themselves at meets, whether I've seen you guys on deck at nationals or, at open water nationals. The Sandpipers parents had a tent. They were all out in force. They had teammates when they finished staying in the water, cheering for their teammates to finish. So how important is culture to you at Sandpipers, and what are some things that you guys do to build it?
So like when it comes down to it, I think so prior to COVID and Erica had a really good shot of making the team in 2020. And those other girls were swimming in Coach Ron's group, like for the first year. Katie and Bella had just gotten their Olympic trial cuts or something. We had a kind of an informal staff meeting at one of the meets where Ron was talking about like, hey, like all of you all talking every now and then to Erica and just keeping her on the track is going to make a difference for her. And that idea of like, hey, it takes a village to do something really special. Our families and kids, I think we know it, like coaches know it. I think now more people understand it after what happened last summer. But the like culture as simple as a team uniform. We at the senior level and up, we really want kids to be looking the part. It doesn't always happen, but hey, if you're not wearing the white shirt on Saturday that everyone else is wearing, you're wearing another Sandpiper shirt because you made your white one dirty or whatever. Things like that. The meet culture is certainly important, and that's just like every swim coach does it, and I think we all need to do it more. It's like, hey, you need to watch your teammates. You need to be on the side of the pool when your teammates are swimming. When you get done with your relay swim, you are taking a couple deep breaths and then yelling louder than anyone else. And encouraging that So that way, when it comes down to it, the kids know, like, I'm not alone. Where, hey, they at a championship meet, they might be the only Sandpiper in that heat, whatever. But you have people behind you who, like, we want you to do really well, and they're going to help you do really well, but also understand, like, hey, you have a bad race, your teammates are still behind you. That changes things for kids when they know that no matter what happens, like, I have a family of people here who are here for me for the same reasons that I am.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, Jake, and that's something that I think, you guys right now have the market cornered on nationally. I mean, it was a spectacle at Open Water Nationals for those couple days, watching you guys support each other. And like I said, some parents with feet in the water cheering. It was really cool to see. And it was neat to see you guys there in full. We were there with athletes that we were very proud of, but to have 10 or 15 athletes in a national level meet like that, for open water especially, was really neat.
Yeah, I mean, for coaches who coach similar kids to me, like, and this is something I just do really poorly. Like, making my kids watch the older kids is so important. And I, like, after every swim, I'm just like, oh crap, like, I needed to have this kid watch that 200 breaststroke and I didn't do it, to see what we're talking about of, hey, what you can do in 3 years from now. Watching races, when we travel to meets, like being in Las Vegas, okay, we're part of Southern California Swimming, but we're 3.5 hours away from Southern California. So local meets in Las Vegas are very local. There's whatever, 1,200 kids in Las Vegas area swimming. Probably a little more now. I think that was right after COVID ended. We were down to 1,200. But so you get to, like, kids know their competition. They go to schools with kids on other teams, all of that. But it's very local. So when we get to go out of town and we're at a prelim final meet or an invitational meet, that idea of, hey, being a team and supporting your teammates is really important, because we're swimming all these people who we don't know, and we're already kind of out of that comfort zone of Las Vegas. No matter where we go, even if it's the same meet we went to last year, it's still a big change for our kids. And having that team, and kids are sitting together in the team area, I've had to yell at kids in my group and be like, hey, you need to move from this friend circle over here and go to our group area right now at this meet. Like, I'm going to let you sit over there tomorrow. Today, I need you all together, or something like that. When we go out of town, we try to get everyone in one area, but you can't really do that at a local meet when, whatever, we have 200 kids total in the meet. We're not putting 200 kids in one spot. All right, this group's there, whatever. But be a part of the team and be with your group mates, I think, is really important to developing that. Hey, when I'm swimming that relay against the guy I know is better than me, this guy behind me has my back type of mindset.
I love it. What are some conversations, Jake, that you and the staff at Sandpipers have with that? I don't want to say typical, but that teenager who thinks they're too cool for team cheers, or thinks they're too cool to act like a great teammate at meets. What are some of the conversations you might have with that athlete?
It's like everything, it depends on that kid. I tend to believe that, hey, at 13, 14, 15 years old, even if the kid doesn't, like, want to do those things, I tend to believe, like, hey, I've got to force the kid to do it, and, like, that fake it till you make it concept. And a certain percentage of those kids will learn that, hey, I like this in the end. A certain percentage won't. And okay, like, forcing that kid to do something that they just hate isn't going to work. But how do I keep them involved? Okay, like a team cheer, like you got to be there. You don't have to yell the loudest if that's not who you are, but you have to show up. Fine, you're not gonna yell like you don't like that kid, and you're not gonna yell and go crazy cheering for him, but you're gonna stand behind the wing. That's awesome. Like, you're still my teammate, and if a kid at least gets that part, like, that's more so than turning your back and ignoring another teammate, even if you don't like them and hate them. After, like, if I coach older kids, that's like that forcing them to do something, that's obviously, it just doesn't work after a certain point, and they've been forced to do it and it didn't work out. So, hey, be a part of the team, be there, show up. Like, I'm not going to get on you because you weren't yelling loud enough, type of thinking. So supporting kids in other groups, I think, is something that's also important too. If you got multiple sites or a younger group to an older group, like when I go to, like this spring, we went to Southern California swimming JOs. My kids are the oldest kids there from our team. So no matter what, the younger kids are looking at my kids, no matter what, whether they want it or not, whether they're having a good meet or not, whatever. Like, the younger kids will always look up to, in some way, shape, or form, those older kids. So making sure kids at that 13-year-old, 14-year-old level, like, know that, hey, this 11-year-old, if they see you throw your wrapper on the ground, they're going to throw their wrapper on the ground. If they see you picking it up, they're probably going to pick their own stuff up. And then the same way, hey, you're 14. That's the only time that's going to happen to you right now. In the summer, hey, you're going to meets with the kids in these upper level groups, and now you're the one looking up to them. And that type of, hey, the kids have to teach themselves and teach the younger kids and support the younger kids, support a kid in a different group, training group as them, is what, when we can get really special things happening at meets with kids from 3 or 4 different groups on relays together, cheering for each other, and seeing that kind of connection across the team. That's not going to happen every day.
For sure. For sure. You know, Jake, I think a lot of people, when they think about Sandpipers and they see the types of athletes that made this last Olympic team, the easy thing to do would be to pigeonhole or categorize Sandpipers as a distance program, forgetting about the fact that, you know, you have athletes like Cody Miller, who came out of the program, Bo Becker, you know, athletes who can sprint. Talk to us about some of the myths that are out there about Sandpiper and what's actually happening. And there is a part of Sandpiper that does embrace the distance training.
Absolutely. Like, so I'll go kind of backwards. Like, hey, at the end of the day, we're putting kids in their best events at a championship meet. We're not just, hey, like, you're on our team, you're swimming the 1500 and 400 IM at the end of the summer. If that's bad for the kid, no one's going to do that. I think if you look at the events, Katie Grimes and Bella Sims swim, like, they're not swimming the 1500 every time. They're not swimming the 800 every time. They might not swim the 400 IM every time. We're trying to do what's best for the kid in the context of our entire program. That said, hey, like, yeah, you might not be in the 1500 at the end of the summer, but you're going to swim it at the beginning of the summer at our local invite meet. And, oh, you dropped a minute from last summer. Great. I don't have to put you in it again now. Or, oh, you didn't drop a minute from last summer. You're swimming it in July. Like, the distance, or I think I said earlier this week to another coach, like, hey, people might think we just swim a lot and do the old school type of training and just swim a lot of freestyle. Like we certainly training and swimming and planning the volumes is certainly important, but like because we might swim a lot and have a higher volume, we're also able to swim a lot of fast stuff. Like, I mean, there's a lot of race pace yards happening in my group. It just, some of that might be the 1500 race pace or the 500 race pace, where other teams might not even allow, like, think about those, and that's fine. But I think just the general idea that people might have is like, hey, we just do crazy things all the time. Certainly we do some crazy things that I think are really special when it comes down to it. But we don't do that every day, every practice. Like you can't do 10 500s freestyle every day and have kids don't like doing that. Kids don't like doing that. I don't like watching it. Like, I mean, I think a good example. So yesterday, I ran a really just kind of like, hey, this is an old school type of set, backstroke. Okay, we did 3 500s, 3 400s, 3 300s, 3 200s, 3 100s, all descend 1 to 3, and like, hey, hopefully your 400s are a little faster than your 500s, and so on. But yeah, we did that this week, but we did that once this entire year, and we did that this week because last week we did 10 100s on 2 minutes for our main backstroke focus. And just making sure like we're training for every event. We like some of the work our kids do in the gym is really, really, really special, I think. And I think like that type of thing shows, like you've got Katie Grimes and Bella Sims having the fastest reaction times consistently at major meets, and like faster than some of the men sometimes. Like, wow, that doesn't happen if all we do is 10 500s free or whatever, 3 400s IM and 3 500s free, 2 rounds descend. You got to do it all to be able to swim it all, I think. And even if, hey, you're not a breaststroker, you still wanting to get better at breaststroke and training the breaststroke and the sprint breaststroke and the long breaststroke. That's how you put together those 400s IM at the end of the season, or how you put together your 200 prime stroke. Like, hey, you remember your 200 breaststroke where you did this really weird thing on the last 50? Like, swim your last 50 backstroke like that. You're fine. I think that type of approach of hitting the variety, and the focus is on the quality work and the speed. People say quality. I think everything we do is high quality, or else I wouldn't do it again. But that focus on the speed is what I think is special. That's in the context of certainly higher volumes than many people, but we're not just swimming freestyle for 2 hours 10 times a week.
Right. Now, Jake, how long are your practices usually? I mean, from age group all the way through even distance swimmers, are they doing more than your mid D and in the senior group, that kind of stuff?
So we try to have it, and we're very privileged to be able to set our team up this way. Okay, one, because pool time in Las Vegas and Clark County is still hard to come by. Like, no new pools have opened up that are available to swim teams since like 2003. Okay, so yeah, so that's still happening. But we try to make sure that every group level is able to go up, and the total amount of training hours offered in a week. At our senior level and up, the 2-hour practices are certainly the sweet spot. My group, hey, we have hour and a half practice and irregularly, but like, hey, like you have to go an hour and a half today, or else our 10 and under group is only swimming for 45 minutes. Like,
Right.
you got to do things like that. But at the senior level, 2-hour practices are pretty standard. We rarely go beyond that. Like 3-hour. I've had several 3-hour practices because I'm doing dry land an hour early, and like the group in front of me got out early, so I get them in the water and we do more drills or dives and things like that.
Yep.
And just making sure that when a kid goes from one group to the next, they're getting a little more. Is how we kind of plan that total hours, and whether that, hey, it's a 2-hour practice one day, hour and a half the other, for alternating, and you get this many hours in a week, or you have less practices and they're all 2 hours and you get the same number. That's how we tend to think of things.
Cool.
That's really cool how you guys have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of being creative. And you know, you mentioned you're fortunate to have some exclusivity with your training at those higher level groups. I know Ron has a lot of flexibility with that top level group and with what he can do. I want to continue to talk a little bit about the programmatic philosophy of training at Sandpipers, because so many people are interested in it. You know, it hasn't been since the 70s and 80s where a club team with 18 and under athletes are making an Olympic team roster. And so what are some of the things that you've observed, Jake, that you think help to create that level of excellence in practice?
I think that really on the whole, like that's when I go back to kind of what I said earlier, like our age group program, and head age group coach Chris Barber are like teaching that work and that racing in practice as, hey, this is important to you swimming fast at the meets. And at the upper level, like, hey, kid, like sometimes that can be bad. And sometimes that can be good if the kids are getting too much out of one another in terms of that racing, or a kid saying like, you're going too fast, don't try now because I don't want to try anymore. Like that type of stuff is certainly bad. But I think like what in terms of what I do, like getting kids that transition from you're just an age group swimming to, hey, now you're making that choice of I really like swimming, I want to get really good. Before you go on is like you want to be racing the people next to you. I think a lot of what I do is I think I've gotten the relationships to the point where I can do this with most of my kids. It's like calling them out and like, hey, that guy over there just beat you and we're swimming backstroke right now. And I don't like to see him beating you backstroke. But then I'll also go back to that other kid who just won and be like, do not let him beat you again because he's trying now because I just called him out. And now we get that competitive atmosphere. And generally when I do things that way, like I work both kids, like the kid who I called out first because he's the best backstroker or something is like, yeah, coach, it's really good. He's swimming fast today. like, rather than that kid making an excuse now of, oh, I'm going slow because of this. He's like, oh, that kid's doing really good. Like, okay, I'm going to try. Sure. And I get that I shouldn't lose to him every time. And creating that type of competitiveness with one another. And also like, I want to beat the people that are better than me. And I don't want to let the people that I'm better than beat me, while still I'm friends with both of those kids. Like that's still just so important because again, like I think relays are a really good example. At the end of the day, those three kids who were battling and whatever, oh, you went slow on that one, like you didn't try, you're doing this, you're doing that. the end of the day, those 3 kids are getting on blocks behind one another and are going to have to do something for the team. So making that kind of competition fun is important. I think we as coaches, a lot on our team in our performance oriented groups, like something as simple as organizing the lanes, which I say it's simple. Sometimes it's not simple. And like, I'm freaking out about which kid should be in what heat of this race or whatever we're doing.
We're about to do that today when we get to practice.
Yeah, like reorganizing the lanes to make sure my 2 best breaststrokers are going head to head. And then the one guy who I'm trying to develop is also going. So that guy's got to fight for his life to even be close. And like, hey, that day where that kid beats him on 1, like, let's go. And those 2 other guys are generally like, yeah, come on. Like you can race with me for a 50 of this 100 at least, or something like that. Like they're going to get them when they get them. But creating that competitiveness at the same time as like, we're all in this together, I think is how we do that.
That's awesome, man. And, what I think that does is, success creates expectations, right? And that's a 2-sided sword as well, because parents can misunderstand like, oh, this is the program that just put, 4 or 5 kids in the Olympic team, some of which are still in high school. This is direction my son or my daughter or my child will take as well. So how do you manage some of those personalities and a lot of, fortunate or unfortunate, the Insta fame of the swimmers on your team?
Yeah, I mean, so that's obviously really tough. For me, at least, I have the problem of like my kids, and hey, maybe their parents too, like they don't think of their kids as good as I think they are. So like, that's a good problem to have. Like, that's an easier one to manage.
Sure.
Right now I'm kind of having some summer goal meetings with my swimmers and setting goal times and this and that. And I'm just like, sure, that's the best time, but like, that's not good. Like, you make this harder. Hearing a kid like the boy who's in the headline photo stuff, he's like, well, these times are really scary. I'm like, yeah, like you're really good now. Like, yeah, we have to think that way, and like, you're okay that they're scary, right? Or teaching that to the kids, like on that one side of, hey, it's okay to set these really big goals, and like, I want you to set goals that are so hard that when you don't get there, you're going to be really happy, because it's still a phenomenal swim, a great race. You did all this, change your technique, you did all this work and practice, whatever, and you had that great race. The time at the end of the day is a number on the scoreboard, I think, in these situations where, like, yeah, you're 14, 14-year-old boy. You better be faster when you're 16. Like, you have to. On the other end of that, hey, I think my kid can do this, this, and this. And I might not see that or believe that it's possible in the end. Like, man, how good is anyone at believing someone can become an Olympian? Like, that's a really hard, like, looking at a 12-year-old, oh, that kid's an Olympian potential. Like, that's a hard thing to think about. It comes down to that same process of, hey, like, I think I'm this good, or I think my son or I think my daughter can be this good. Okay, like, I'm going to do everything I can to help them get there. And like, I try not to limit my belief in what a kid is capable of. I certainly do. I think we all do. And like, oh, this kid's only ever going to do this. But I try to like not set a limit on what the number is. And then it's like, okay, if you want to do that, how are we going to get there? Right now, you're whatever, a 220, 200 freestyler at 13 years old. Hey, that's not slow for boys or girls, I don't think.
Mhm.
But if you want to go 2 minutes when you're 16, okay, let's get halfway there this year. How do we get to 210? Or like if you're just trying to say I'm going to drop 10 seconds and 100 free, at any age that's really hard. Let's take those steps along the way, and we're going to end up somewhere way better than we started. We might not end up at whatever time this year, but how close can we get? Or what can we do in 2 years before you move up to the next group? Can you improve your weak stroke enough to have the potential to do that, say, whatever that backstroke split that you need to go to make the math work for your goal time?
Mhm.
That type of thing. It's the same on either end. Like, here's a big goal, and we want to work backwards from there. And just right now we're here, so let's get to here before we talk about here first. I think that's the best way that I tend to think of things. Is like, all right, this is where we're at right now. This is where you want to go.
Mhm.
Let's get to point B in the middle, then C, then D, and then see what happens in a year.
I love it, Jake. One of the big questions I think a lot of coaches have when they watch the success of Sandpipers over the last year is, okay, we just did something pretty remarkable. As coaches, we tend to think when we do something, all right, we've got to reinvent this again for 3 years from now. And then we're going to have even more people make the team. And then another 3 years. How do you guys manage setting new goals for the team, new goals for the program, and take the success as satisfaction for all of your hard work, understanding that it's a relatively rare thing to do, and then not hold yourself so harshly accountable if you're not putting that many kids in the next team?
Yeah, so like yeah, that's a big one. So after 2016, the team goal was 20 and 20, so to have 20 Olympic trial qualifiers by 2020. And I can't remember how many we had in 16, like 8, 12, I don't know, not even close to 20.
Mhm.
But our team was growing. Okay. We had this number of kids at a certain level in the pipeline. And it's like, well, if these kids who have their cuts in 16 keep swimming and get them again in the 2020 period, hey, even though they're in college, that's still a Sandpiper. They're an alumni, but they're still a Sandpiper. And then we have this new class of kids coming up. Okay, well, it's possible. But like, would we consider ourselves failures as a team, if we don't have 3 Olympians in 2024? I don't think so. I think what we do probably better than most people is, even though we're really serious about most things that we do, we're also just a bunch of idiots, and like making jokes like, hey, Coach Ron, like, you only got 2 Olympians in 2024. Are you any good anymore? Like, he's going to be the one making that. He's going to be the one making that joke to me on like a text message. It's like, I only got 2 kids. I'm terrible. Like, should I retire? We keep that joking atmosphere at the same time of being a high pressure, high performance organization. I think probably the best joke that we have, like Coach Ron has, is just like the question, like, is that good? Like, hey, like, dude, Coach
I
Ron,
can hear him say that.
my kid just dropped 10 seconds in his 200 fly in 3 months, and you're asking me, is that good? And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, no, it's not. Fine, he's going to be faster next year. Yeah, like that type of thing. But like, how do we get more kids on an Olympic team in 2024? I think comes down to kind of what you're saying, and like, we don't want to reinvent any wheels. We I think as a team and as a coaching staff, like we try to find the things that work well, and we do them and we repeat it until they stop working. Like I think for me, I try to learn as much as possible and try out new things. And a lot of the times, the idea that I had is bad, and we don't do that set again, or we don't do that drill again, or whatever. But some of the times it works out really, really well. Like the breaststroke drills I'm having my kids do right now, we weren't doing any of these drills in the fall. And the drills I was doing in the fall, I'm not doing right now because I think these are better. And being willing to do that and like test and experiment, but like you gotta cut those losses when something isn't working, and go back to what's worked for you in the past, what you're confident in. As a coach, especially, like you got to be confident in what you're asking kids to do, and like believe in the work that you're asking them, and just keep testing those things. And when you go past a certain point and it stopped working, you got to back off.
For sure, for sure. And we'll have to do another coach's corner on some of these drills because we'd be interested in hearing some of them. Last question, Jake. You know, as somebody who promotes the sport on social media as much as I can and in a positive light, you do the same thing. Talk to me about USA Distance Revolution.
Yeah, so I think I started that, which swimmers, you shouldn't go to bars ever. I think I started it at a bar when we were joking about like the butterfly revolution group, which I think like it had some very valuable stuff going on in it, but it just like got neglected, and then whatever, a bunch of spammers and stuff, and it like just became not, it just wasn't alive anymore, I think would be the way to say it. So we were joking about that. And like I think I was reading and going through like the ASCA distance school, like the history of just like those things are really cool, just to see what's happened in 50 years of swimming. And like, hey, the main swim coaches idea exchange is great, but I still think it's great, but there's a lot going on. And
you're telling me, man.
Yeah, like there's a lot going on. Like, I mean, from anything from 8 and unders to master swimmers to different strokes to high school swimming to political stuff, obviously, is blown up, happened in the past couple of years. Like, there's a lot going on. And just that Distance Revolution Facebook page of like, I think like Jay Chambers from USA Swimming called us out on it. It's like, hey, like it's really cool that we're sharing all these workouts. But like, can we actually talk about it sometimes? And what do we need to do and change as a culture or teams? Or how do I get kids to enter these events that they don't want to for the first time? Just to have that specific focus spot, I think is really important. I think as coaches, and where I think at my position, okay, I'm 31. I've been coaching like summer league and things like that since I was 14. So I know I feel like I know the technique and how to teach kids how to swim and things like that. But the year-long program design, what's good, what's bad, like I don't get like how often does a coach get feedback on a workout from a coach on another team or a coach across the country? And that's where I think we can all learn a lot more of. If, hey, this coach who's really good at 14-year-old breaststrokers being like, dude, Jake, I've done this, it sucks. Like, I would love that, because I don't know until someone tells me that, or until I hit that wall, we're like, oh, it does suck, and then I got to change something. I think that just for the general, and it's not just distance freestyle we talk about in there, like we talk about IM, and more that distance-based swimming philosophy of like, hey, you can have really great sprinters come out of the team, like Cody Miller and Bo Becker, like you mentioned, some really, really great sprinters come out of the team who is known for the distance swimming. And I think building in the end, I think if I think it would be harder. A lot of the teams that do the shorter, the pace-oriented stuff all the time, I think that's harder than what we do. I've seen some really special teams do things like that. I visited Machine Aquatics a handful of times. They're in the Northern Virginia area where I grew up, and I'm just like watching their practices, and like they train really hard. And certainly, people might think of them as a sprinty team. They do a lot of they do a lot of work. And I'm like watching, I'm like, wow, like that would be way harder for me to do than what I'm doing right now. Like get kids to swim as fast as they are.
That's a great point. That's a great. We are in the midst of trying a lot of new things. Yeah, and we still have our longer people doing the things that we've traditionally done because they love it and they can handle it. And then we're evolving on the other end. And it's funny that you mentioned that Dan Jacobs has a lot of great stuff that I like to follow. And that's cool. And it's good to see that you're thinking of having that mix too.
Mm-hmm. And just as like, it would be great if we could have a sprinting revolution, because like I would certainly be learning a lot in there too, where, hey, we have just like this one kind of focused area. And like, I think at the end of the day, I think more often than not, kids can learn to enjoy and appreciate distance training and swimming and races that then we put them out to be like, yeah, hey, you don't have to swim the 1500 every meet, but when you go, I want to see you go, because that having that really hard 1500 is going to help you and your 200 IM at the end of the summer. You're going to be more confident. You're going to know you can close that last 50, whatever it is. And that type of approach to things, I think, would help a lot of kids.
And being strong and ready on the last day of a meet. I mean, that's what I love about that training. Jake, this has been awesome today, and we'll love to do a follow-up episode. But how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about your philosophy and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my email is USA Swim Coach Jake, JAKE @gmail.com. You can send me an email, USA Swim Coach Jake, on Facebook, that USA Distance Revolution Facebook group. And then my Instagram is also USA Swim Coach Jake. You can add me there, message me, and we'll get in touch. I will say, I don't like emails, so I might be slow to get back to you, but I will get back to you. But messaging me on Instagram is generally a little easier. Joining that Distance Revolution group and asking questions. I think like we have a lot of like really experienced, and I think this is a great example too. Like we have a lot of really experienced and talented coaches in that group. And I think even those guys who've been doing it longer than I've been alive, they learn too when other people ask them questions, and explaining something helps that team get better as well. And I think that's just really important to me. Like someone asked me to explain why I did what I did, and I can't explain it, but like, oh, I just learned something about that. Like I got to figure that out. And that's helping me too.
That's awesome, Jake. Thanks so much for being on the program. We appreciate it. All the best to you and Sandpipers this summer.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dan. We'll be around.
Thanks, Jake.